wabarakatuh, and good morning, everyone. So thank you for attending this webinar event. Today, we're going to discuss basically about how to write the first manuscript, especially in biotechnology area. So thank you for joining us for today's webinar from live Zoom and YouTube. I've seen here we have a participant from many university and research institution in Indonesia, as well as I can see here we have a few people from Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh University. Hi. My name is Aqsha, and I'm the host and the moderator for today's event. Today, hopefully, we are going to discuss and learn about writing and publishing first quality scientific manuscript in environmental biotechnology field, presented by Prof. Ramaraj Boopathy from Nicholls State University and currently acting as the editorial board of Bioresearch Technology. So just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any question during the presentation, please, you can use the Slido link that we're going to provide in the chat room. And then, however, if you have difficulty, for example, to access the link, you can also type in the your question in the box in your Zoom or YouTube chat room, and we'll try to bring them up during presentation. And we will also have time for a question at the end. Okay, before we move into the main presentation today, I'd like to welcome Professor Chandra Setiadi, the Editor-in-Chief Journal of Engineering and Technological Science, ITB, to give 1 or 2 words about the event. To Professor Chandra Setiadi, I'd like to welcome you. Thank you.
On the writing scientific. Good morning to all the participants of the webinar on the writing scientific manuscript. So this webinar series, there will be 2 webinars. So today's webinar will be delivered by Professor Ramaraj Boopathy. He is from the Nicholls State University, USA, and moderated by Dr. Aqsha. He is from Department of the Bioenergy and Chemurgy. And the second one will be delivered by Dr. Afrianti Sumboja and moderated by Dr. Hoiridin. So the second one will be on the 2nd of November next week. So this webinar organized by the Journal Engineering and Technological Sciences, ITB, and we would like to introduce our journal. So the ITB Journal have several journals, and 4 of them has been indexed by Scopus. So namely, the Journal of the Engineering and Technological Sciences, Journal of ICT and Application, Journal of Mathematical and Fundamental Sciences, and Journal of Regional and City Planning. 2 journals is in the Q2, and the other 2 journals is in the Q3 and Q4. I would like to invite you to visit our website and also submit your manuscript to our journal. So our website is journals.itb.sc.id. So I would like to thank you all to join this webinar. So hopefully it will give you a nice discussion and fruitful also meeting. Thank you very much. Good morning.
Thank you, Prof. Chandra, for the opening. Now, without further ado, I think we would like to welcome our presenter today, Professor Dr. Ramaraj Boopathy. Let me introduce a little bit about Prof. Raj. Prof. Raj is basically a NALSI fourth-year distinguished professor of biological sciences at the Nicholls State University, USA. He received the Jerry Ledet Foundation Endo Professorship in Environmental Biology in 2002, and also John Brady Endo Professorship in 2012. In 2008, Dr. Raj Boopathy received the Nicholls State University's Prudential Award for Teaching Excellence. So he has more than 30 years of research experience in the area of bioremediation and bioprocessing. And he has published, I think, more than 180 research papers in peer-reviewed journal and about 20 book chapters. So it's quite a lot. So he edited 2 books, and his research work had been cited, I think, more than 8,000 times with H index of 50. And Dr. Boopathy, Professor Raj is also the recipient of a World Class Professor Award from the government of Indonesia, and he is appointed as a visiting professor in ITB Indonesia. So definitely, I think we're going to learn many things from Prof. Raj about writing the scientific manuscript for the high quality journal. So let's welcome Prof. Raj, and we'll give the floor to you for your presentation. Thank you so much, Prof. Raj.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Arini Wresta, and also I want to thank Professor Chandra for inviting me to give this presentation. Let me open my slide and share with you first. Yes. Can you all see my slide okay, everybody?
Yes, Prof. Yes.
Okay. Let me move this to. All right. Today's talk is going to be on writing and publishing, quality scientific papers. I want to go over what are the different criteria, what is expected from the editorial side, and what one can do to, get your paper not rejected and at least get through the review process and try to get the first paper published. Okay. So if you look in the history, people have been trying to publish their ideas and stories, and they all started long time ago. If you look at some of the cave history, like 30,000 year old paintings have been discovered in France, and they've been publishing. They wanted to, in humankind, they wanted to let other people know what's going on. So that's why publication has a long history. Okay. So as I said, there's 30,000 year old cave paintings out there. And if you visit this website, you can see some beautiful pictures that's been preserved in painting forms. So do you also have something to share with other via some form of communication through your research? You can publish. And so we have technical side. That's what we are all involved in, publishing scientific papers. And we also have popular journals to, convey to the mass general public. And that's a different kind of publication where you want to put everything in simple terms that everybody can understand. But today we're going to talk about scientific publication. It's all technical publication. Okay. So why do we publish? Scientists publish because they want to share their findings to the scientific community and also to advance the knowledge and understanding. So the peer, they want to be respected by the peers. So in the group. So that's why they publish their work, and they present this new and original results or any new methods they come up with. And they also present integrated review in the field to summarize any particular topic they are really familiar with. So those are different ways to people come up with publication. So importantly, they want to share their knowledge with other people. So we are all working in universities, so we all go through this conundrum of publish or perish. So if you publish, you'll be known, and so there is a push and there is a stress, and people want to, publish papers, and from administration on to everywhere, they're pushing you to publish papers. So we all write grants to get money to do research. Once you get your grant successfully funded, then you generate data, do research with students, and then the next thing, you need to publish. So this goes through the cycle of publisher perish conundrum here. We not only publish to share ideas, there's also in US in the funding agency, if you get any funding, you need to publicize your work. You need to share your work with other people. They want to know how many papers you publish as a part of your funding cycle. So it's also a funding agency requirement in most countries. So what do publishers want on the editorial side? What they want is they want the originality of your science, whether it is original idea, and your work is significant advancement in the field that you're trying to publish. All the methods are appropriate, and your conclusion is appropriate when you write a paper. And how is the readability? When you read the paper, can anyone can understand? Is there a flow? And it's not really choppy. And also, you wanted to make sure the study meet ethical standards. So these are some of the expectation and publishing side people have. What they really don't want from papers, they don't want any duplications of work. You don't want paper that's reporting already, many papers have already reported same results. They don't want that kind of paper. They really don't want reports of no scientific interest. There are work that you do out of curiosity, but if there is no scientific value to it, you cannot publish that work. They don't want that work that is out of date. Nowadays, biotechnology is moving so fast. You cannot use techniques that are really 50 years old, right? They want to keep up with the technology. They don't want inappropriate methods or conclusions from your paper. They also don't want your studies with insufficient data. You're claiming something extraordinary, but you don't have data to support your claim. So these are the things they don't want from any papers. So before you start writing, you need to ask yourself a question. So what steps do I need to take before I write a paper? How do I properly plan and develop my article? How can I ensure I'm using proper scientific manuscript language? Okay, these are the things you need to ask yourself before you start writing a paper. If you are ready to start publishing, you should consider publishing if you have information that advance the understanding and you have something specific in your research field that is something novel to report, and then you are ready for publishing. Okay. The publication can come in 3 different forms. You can write paper, original results from your research. That's called research paper. You can also rationalize and refine and reinterpret published result. That is mostly kind of a review or summary. And then you can also write a big review paper. Okay. So these are some of the different form of publications out there. So a good manuscript, if you read a paper, these are the things it should have. It should be clear when you read the paper, and it should be useful and has some exciting message. Okay, there's a take-home message, and the message is really exciting to the audience. And also it should be presented and constructed in a logical manner. Everything that flows really well, the methods are all standardized. If anybody can read your paper and want to repeat your experiment, they should be able to repeat your experiment by looking at your method. It's also designed so that reviewers and editors can simply grasp the significance of your work very easily. Okay, so if you look at editors and reviewers, they're all busy people. So they don't spend a lot of time trying to improve your paper. They look at flaws in a paper and try to reject a paper. So if something exciting, something good had catch the eye, then that's really good. That will have easy publication. So you need to develop your manuscript so that they can do the job effectively and efficiently, the editors and reviewers. So they don't give them any excuse to reject the paper, make them exciting. Then you'd ask yourself, who is your audience? Do you wish to reach specialist group of researchers from your work, or a multidisciplinary group, or is a mass general audience? Okay, you need to adjust the information of writing according to the group that you want to reach. Okay, maybe it's within the physics community, or chemistry, or engineering, chemical engineering, or biology. So you can gear towards a specific group, or if it is a multidisciplinary work, you need to have a different style of writing, because if you write specific paper, some of the methodology you've been using, you don't have to describe too much, because people already know how to do certain things, right? But if you're trying to reach general audience, you need to elaborate on your method, because people may not know what kind of method you're using to do your research. So those are things that you need to consider before you start writing paper. Again, who is your audience? The journals, even in similar subject, reach readers with different backgrounds and interests. So you need to look at journals that gear towards different aspect and different group that you want to make your work known. Each journal has its own style, so you need to make sure you read journals, authors' information, and sometimes you can read one or two papers and glance through how they publish paper in the particular journal to get an idea of the style and formatting and approaches that will help writing a paper. And also you need to make sure what kind of audience you're trying to reach. Is it a worldwide, a very standard journal that has a big circulation, or local journal, very, very specific, only goes to the society of where you belong to. So those are things you need to consider. Okay. And then you need to look at which journal you need to publish. You need to take some time to read the aims and scope of the journal before you submit any paper. Make sure your work fits the scope of the journal. And then what type of article do you want to publish? And what type of readership does it have? What are the current topics in the journal? So all the things you need to consider before you start writing paper. You can also ask your colleagues for advice. In your department, you'll have people publish paper. You can get their feedback. Just give you a paper and let them read. They will suggest what journal to submit. Okay. Again, the manuscript come in different forms. So if you're an undergrad student, you're starting out collecting data, you want to publish your work, you can do conference paper. In conference, they do proceedings. And then in journal, if it is a short research, you can do fast publication through short communications. Instead of writing full length article, you can do short communication. And then if you have decent data, you have enough to fit a full research article, you can do full research article. And if you are well established, and if you have a lot of reviews, material available in particular subject, you can do a review article. Okay, so those are different form of publication you can make. So you need to ask yourself which type of these papers that should you start writing. And also ask your colleague and supervisor for advice and manuscript type that you wanted to publish. So if you are starting out very first, you wanted to get your your feet wet, maybe conference proceedings could be the first one to start. Okay. The conference papers are really excellent for disseminating very early some of the research that are not complete. And research that are in progress. You wanted to, get it out. If you have part of the experiment done, you want to show them to the people. The conference proceedings are the good way. These are typically 3,000 to 4,000 word articles, 3 figures and 15 to 30 references, maximum 3 pages in a conference proceedings. So you make a draft and submit to the conference organizers. They have a small editorial board, and then they review, and it is a good way to start your first paper if you start publishing. So that could be the first one you can do. Full-length article or original articles, this is the standard for disseminating. If you have completed the research and you have a good result and a story to tell, then this is a good way to do a full-length article. Typically, it's maximum 8,500 words. This kind of paper has maximum 5 figures, 3 tables, and maximum 50 references. Okay. Again, you start writing and make a draft and submit to the journal that is appropriate for the work. And it's a good way to build your scientific career. If you have your very first full-length paper when you publish, that's where you start your scientific career. And then we have a short communication type of papers, which is very quick and early communication of significant original advances, because a lot of people are doing same kind of work. And you do a part of the work that has yielded good result. And if you want to publish that instead of completing the whole project, you can do this short communication, which is faster way to publish. And these are much shorter than full-length article, maximum 3,500 words and 2 to 4 figures and 8 or 10 references. And so these are short communication papers, another form to write your paper. Your research. And then you have review paper. Review papers are very critical synthesis of specific research topic, and mostly well-established lab people work on the review papers. Maximum it contains 13,000 words and 10 figures and anywhere from 80 to 400 references. You can do extensive reviews. And you prepare and publish review papers in an excellent way to consolidate the knowledge and to map out what is needed in that particular area that is missing, knowledge gap, and you're summarizing other people's work. Okay, there are a lot of review papers out there, and it's an example of one in Journal of Cleaner Production. So people published review papers from well-established labs. Okay. What steps do I need to take before I write my paper? You need to determine if you're ready to publish. You can, look at your data and compare from your literature review. Your data is a little different or something new, then it's time to publish. And decide on the type of manuscript. It could be a short communication. It could be a full-length research article. And choose the target journal. So you need to make sure you go through, narrow it down to maybe 2 or 3 journals, and focus on, your first choice. And then if the first choice you get rejected, you can go to the second. Okay. So for maybe two or 3 journal you choose, and then make sure you read each journal and guide for authors. So you need to make sure you follow the journal format and style before you send it out for publication. So consulting the guide for authors will save you time and also save editor's time. So all editors hate wasting time on paper that is very poorly prepared, and they don't even follow any kind of formatting. And that's a very good reason for them to reject a paper very quickly. Okay. So it's also a sign of disrespect if you send a paper that is not well prepared and submitted, and poorly designed and formatted. And the editors sometimes, get irritated, and they don't even, in a primary screening, you get rejected. Okay. So this is the time I usually ask what kind of key features you read in a paper that best describe this is the best paper I read. Let's keep that for discussion at the end of my talk. Okay, so maybe a few of you can share the features of the paper that you think this is the best paper you ever read. Okay. So you can go through in my view, paper that are I consider really the best are easy to read, easy to follow. There is not very simple English, written in very simple English, no jargons used at all, and brevity. Very description is to the point. Not repeating over and over. Okay? And very clear and concise. So those are the things I take it. Let's see how your you think best paper in your view. Okay. So a couple of quotes. If you look at stimulating creativity and overcoming fear of failure, Albert Einstein stated that imagination is more important than knowledge. So you need to imagine big and then follow science. Okay, imagination is important. Okay. Making new connections. So discovery consists of looking at the same thing as everyone else looking at, but thinking something different. So that is what discovery. A lot of people are looking at the same thing, but you are thinking differently. So this is what Albert Gorky said, Nobel Prize winner in 1937 in medicine. So let's look at the outline. So for writing a quality manuscript, preparations first, article construction, good language use, make sure don't make a lot of mistakes in language. Technical details are important. And then you need to make sure when the paper come back for revision, then you respond to reviewers' comments. And then we'll talk about ethical issues and then conclude about how to get the paper accepted. So these are some of the outline. I'm going to go ahead and talk about it. Okay. Let's talk about article construction, how to construct a paper. Okay. So generally, most of the papers that you read should have this kind of article structure. You have your title of the paper followed by author's information. Then most of the time, the multi-author, there's only one corresponding author, okay? Very rarely they have multiple corresponding author. Then you have abstract and keywords, and then you have a main text. The main text usually have, these are the things they should have in main text. They have introduction, a method section, results section, discussion section, followed by conclusions. So this is general format of main text, followed by acknowledgement, references, and supplementary materials, which you submit on journal website. So if you look at title, author, and abstract, they need to be accurate and informative. And because these are the information the journals use to index your paper for search function. So it has to be accurate, and your name and addresses are correct. And the title should be, very accurately portrayed. In the main text, each has a distinct function. We'll go through that introduction, what should be in the introduction, what should be in the methods, okay? So let's look at title. A good title should contain fewest possible words that adequately describe the content of the paper. So you don't want to have a long title to your paper, okay? So what the reviewers and editors look in the title should convey the main findings of the research that you're trying to publish. And the title should be very specific and be concise, very short, not too long, and should be complete. You cannot use incomplete sentences. And also it should attract readers. When they look at the title, oh, that paper looks interesting. So those are the things you should expect in a title. What you don't want in a title is unnecessary jargon. You're putting some word that you don't even know what the terms are, the definition of the words. Okay, you don't want to use uncommon abbreviations. If you use an abbreviation, you need to expand in the title. You cannot use uncommon abbreviation in your title. Don't use ambiguous terms. The terms that are not clear, don't use it in your title. And also don't use unnecessary details in a title. It should be short. It doesn't read like a method section, right? Title should not focus on part of the content of your paper, right? Title should be just convey the meaning, convey the findings of your research, and be specific to it. Okay. So here is an example of how a title should not be. Look at the top one. is the title. Slower processing is correlated with higher levels of depressed mood, fatigue, lower verbal fluency, fewer words and digits recalled, and poorer recall of visual spatial information in MS patients. That's a very long title, and it's almost give away the whole content of the paper, right? So that's not a good way to put a title of a paper. Okay, the same title can be written as the one in the below, a relationship between information processing, depression, fatigue, and cognition in multiple sclerosis. So that tells everything what's that paper going to be. That's very specific, to the point. It doesn't give away the whole content of the paper, and it basically attracts the reader. So that's how a title should be. So don't make your title too long and convoluted, okay? Let's talk about authorship. So general principle for who is listed first. The first author, the person usually conduct the research, mostly students, and sometimes supervisor. They collect data and analyze. If they do more work, and they get the first authorship. And then you put the, if somebody else deserve co-authorship, you need to give co-authorship to other people that participate in your project. And then you put the paper together and submit the paper to the journal. And as I said, there is always, most of the time, very rarely I had seen only one corresponding author, okay? The journal office and editors would like to correspond to only one author, that are senior or corresponding author to the paper. So there is not, most of the time, you don't see multiple corresponding author, okay? And these are the things you don't want in authorship. You need to avoid ghost authorship, which is leaving out authors who should be included. Somebody contributed to the work and they should deserve authorship. You should include them, right? And gift authorship, you should avoid that, including authors who did not contribute significantly to the publication. So don't put that. Sometimes you put university president and university dean that they did not do anything about your project, and you shouldn't give authorship to people like that. And then you need to make sure your names are spelled consistently, okay? Sometimes, your first name, you shorten your name from one paper to another paper. Like for me, I go Raj Boopathy, Ramaraj Boopathy. You need to be consistent, right? So you need to, every time you publish a paper, you need to keep the same name. So don't shorten your name, okay? Authors and affiliation, you need to be consistent with spelling, full versus short names. So you need to have full addresses instead of short addresses, including current and correct email addresses, okay? So here is some of those examples. Here is an author. So this author can, instead of giving, full name, he sometimes he gives full name, sometimes he gives only the middle name, first name, and that's not the way to do it. You need to be consistent. Here's another one. His full name is David, and he goes by Dave to his friends. So in some papers, he put his name as Dave, and in some papers, he put his David. So you need to be consistent. If you put Dave, and you need to put Dave all the time in all the papers, okay? Affiliation, you need to make sure which department you belong to and which institution you belong to. And the next thing is abstract. The quality of an abstract will strongly influence the reviewers and editors' decision about your paper, okay? So you need to catch their attention in your abstract. So you're trying to use your abstract to sell your paper, okay? So your good abstract should be precise and honest, okay? And it can stand alone. If you read an abstract, people should know what is this paper going to be. They don't have to read the whole paper, and they can have some idea by just simply reading the abstract. A good abstract also uses no technical jargons or acronyms, all right? So if you have to use acronym, you need to expand it in the abstract, okay? And the abstract should be very brief and specific, and you should not cite any references in the abstract. Do not give references in the abstract. So those are some key points of good abstract, okay? Again, you're trying to impress the reviewers and editors. So if you write a really good abstract and you will sell your paper, then they say it's a good paper, it should go for a review process. So here's more key points about abstract. Here, good abstracts should state what problem or issue was addressed, a brief background about that, what was done before by other people, maybe a few sentences, how it was done, what was found or learned, and what was recommended. So these are the information you should try to provide in an abstract, and it should be brief. Most of the time, there is a word, maximum word that you should allow, journal allow them, sometimes 150 words, sometimes 200 words. So you need to stick with that word count. And so these are the information you should put in your abstract. And then keywords are important for indexing purposes by the journal. So they enable your manuscript to be more easily identified and cited. So keywords are important. So you need to make sure you check the guide for authors for general requirement for journal keywords, okay? Keywords should be very, very specific. You should avoid uncommon abbreviation and general terms. And don't put uncommon abbreviation in your keywords, all right? You can use general abbreviation like DNA. DNA, everybody knows what is a DNA, right? But don't use uncommon abbreviation in your keywords, okay? Let's talk about introduction of your paper. What kind of material should be in your introduction? Introduction provides necessary background about your work that you're going to be writing about. And this will put your work in context, okay? It should be clear from the introduction, what work you're going to be talking about. And then it should include why the current work was performed, what is the need for it, what is unique about this paper, why you have to publish this paper. And you have to clearly state the objective of your work, okay? What is the main objective of your paper and significance. So there is a very brief review of literature you can give, what has been done before, who published anything closely related to your work. It should be brief. It's not like a big review of literature, but very brief, okay? So what was done before in very, very brief term, you can put in your introduction. So these are the things you wanted to include in your introduction. So first you consult the guide for author for word limit, set the scene for your work, outline the problem and the hypothesis you're going to be explaining. Make sure you ensure that the literature cited is balanced and up to date and relevant. Make sure you include the references that are recent and up to date and also relevant to your work, okay? And then define any non-standard abbreviation and jargon and anything that you're going to be using. First time when you put an abbreviation, you need to expand it in your introduction. What you don't want in your introduction, don't write an extensive review of the field. Don't give like 5-6 pages of what's already been done, who reported what. Don't do that. That's a separate review paper is there for, okay? In introduction, don't put extensive review. And don't put disproportionately cite your own work. Most of the reference, like 20-30% of your work, don't cite all of it from your lab or your work. So you need to make sure you also include in your introduction contradictory studies or work by competitors, right? Some of the studies that in the same subject you're doing has a different result than what you're going to be reporting. Make sure you include that as well in your introduction. Don't describe methods, results, or conclusion in your introduction. Those are all separate sections. Sometimes I had seen in papers, people say what methods they used in the introduction, okay? And also don't overuse the term like this is a novel work, this is the very first time it's been reported. And that's a big turnoff for the reviewers, okay? So don't make overuse of these terms in your introduction, okay? What should be in the method section? The method section must provide good, sufficient information. So any reader can reproduce the experiment looking at your method section. So clearly spell out all the methods you did to carry out the experiment. If somebody read your paper, they should be able to conduct the experiment looking at your method section. Okay. So unless the guide for authors states otherwise, you always use method section when you write in past tense. Don't use in writing present tense in the method section. The present tense is usually used when you write a methodology type paper, method paper. But most of the time, your methods section should be written in past tense because the work is already completed. You did the work already. So don't write in present tense. Okay. And let's look at the results section, the main finding of the research you're trying to report. So in the results section, what you should include is your figures and tables to summarize your data. You can show the results of statistical analysis. And when you compare things, you compare like with like, apple to apple, orange to orange. Don't compare something totally different. Okay, so it should compare with a similar comparison. So what you don't want in your results section, don't duplicate data. So don't use the same information in the table form and figure form and text form, right? Just use one format or the other. Don't give the same data in the table, same data in the figure. That's not good. That's basically redundant, repeating it, right? And don't use graphics to illustrate data that can easily be summarized with the text. Okay, sometimes you don't need a table or a figure. You can easily summarize some of the data without those. Okay. In graphics, readers often look at the graphics first and before reading the full paper. And many times they don't have to go no further because when they look at the figure, they know exactly what you're talking about. So therefore, the author and reviewer should be very particularly sensitive to make sure the inclusion of clear informative graphics. So when you give the graphics and the legend and the title, it should be very clear and very informative. So when people look at the figure, they should know what is the data you're talking about. They don't have to go read your paper and to look at what is that particular figure is going to talk about. Okay? Figures and tables can be most effective way to present result. So your caption, the title that you're giving for table and figure should be complete sentences, and it should be standalone. So when they read that title of the figure, people should understand what that figure is all about, okay? Without the need to read the whole manuscript to find out what is that particular figure is. So your title of the figure should be complete, and it should be complete sentence, and it should convey what is in that figure. And the data represented should be easy to interpret when people look at your data. And color should be given only when necessary. Most of the time, black and white, and color figures, people usually charge extra for that. So that's up to your discretion. Okay. So here's an example of what you shouldn't be giving in your table. Look at this one. Look at the table. This table gives color codes and notations of the soil layers, giving this information, and this information can be summarized in one sentence, right? You don't need a table or figure for this data. Here's you can summarize the whole thing in that table. The surface soils were dark, grayish brown, grading to light olive brown in wetlands and pale olive in grasslands at 100 centimeters. So you should avoid giving table like this. Sometimes you can summarize the results in text whenever possible, okay? Look at this presentation of the data in both form, tables as well as figure form. The figure and table are the same information, but if you look at the table, it gives a better conveyance of your data. So for this kind of data, I will go with the table. Table, you can easily understand your data compared to this figure for this particular data, right? So give one or the other to make sure you can decide which one is giving a better understanding of your data. This is a poor graphics, right? If you don't give graphics like that in your result, why it is poor? The legend is poorly defined, right? So we don't know what this is. There's a lot of acronym in here, right? They didn't explain what it is. And the graph contains too much data. It's all over the place, right? And there is no trend line going through these, data points, right? And we don't know what is in the y-axis, what is in the x-axis, what is R, what is K, we don't know, right? You need to go read the whole paper to understand that, right? So this is a very poor form of giving your graphics. And the same data, it's look a little better here because now they expanded the legends. Now we know what is each of those means, right? And but there is still too much data and there is no trend line. It's still not good in this way. Okay? But you can split the same data into two figures, A and B, and this is the best way to represent the same data. You can see there is a trend line, the figure is not too crowded, and you can see the legends are clearly spelled out. You can know what is K, what is R, explained as rate and K promoter added. So this is the best way for the same data that I showed you in different form. So don't put too much data, crowded data points in one figure. If you can split the figure, and make sure your figure is complete. You give the legends and everything full information. So that's what this figure is. Legend is clear, data organized, trend lines are present. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to say to you about how results should look like in the form of graphics. And statistics are important, so indicate the statistical tests you done and to make sure your data is statistically significant. So you may give the standard deviation, you make sure your numerator, denominator with percentages are given, and use means and standard deviation report normally distributed data. When you report p-values, the reviewers expect the whole number. Don't say it is less than 0.05, right? Try to give the whole p-value number. And the word significant should be only used to describe when your data is statistically significant, right? Don't simply say in your text it is significant if you never did the statistical analysis, okay? So that's another big turnoff for reviewers, okay? So make sure when you say your data is significant, you need to support it with your statistical analysis. So what should be in the discussion of your paper? Discussion provide an answer to the question like, how do the results relate to the study's objective, hypothesis, or a research question, right? After you talked about results, how did this address all the things that you talked about at the beginning, the objectives, hypothesis, and research questions? How do the findings relate to previous work done by others, or by you, or by your team? Okay, how it was related with the work, and are maybe different? You need to explain that in a discussion. What are the possible interpretation of your findings? If you have the data, you need to explain why that data looked that way. What was the reason for that? And then which one, if you like the result, and which result is better for you, and explain why that is a good result. And then if there is any limitations in your study, you put that in a discussion. These are some of the shortcomings and further research need to be done. So you need to clearly state that if there is any limitations. So what you should avoid in a discussion, don't make grandiose statements, again, that are not supported by the data, okay? For example, don't make statement like this if you don't have a data to support. This novel treatment will massively reduce the prevalence of malaria in the third world. You don't have a data to back it up. So make sure you avoid such big grandiose statements, okay? And also avoid introducing new terms or results that you never described before, and you're putting it in a discussion section. So don't do that in your discussion. And conclusion section, you're putting your study in context and describe how it represents an advancement in the field. And conclusion section suggests future experiment, okay? Avoid repetition with the other section. Don't, put whatever in the abstract in the conclusion. Avoid being overly speculative, make sure you have the data and report the result, and the results are all, supported by, data. Don't overemphasize, as I said, don't make grand statement, okay? As those are the things that you should follow in your conclusion section. And then you need to acknowledge anyone that helped you in your study in acknowledgement section. So anyone that helped you in writing, corrected your language, researchers supply material, funding agencies, anyone who provide technical help, all of those you can put in acknowledgement section. And then references, so you need to make sure you check spelling of all authors' names, punctuation, and number of authors to include before using et al., right? Some European journals will allow you to put et al. In your reference section, but most of the US journal, you need to spell out all the authors in the paper, right? Reference style, follow the journal reference style. And what you should avoid is don't use personal communication in your references, and don't put unpublished observation or paper that is just submitted but not published or not accepted. Don't put that in your reference. Citing articles published only in local language, regional language, avoid that. Most of the time people say they want, English journals in English paper. Only they will want in the reference section. Don't put original references in your reference section. Again, avoid excessive self-citation. You can cite some papers of yours and your group, but don't do overly about your paper, okay? Check the style and format as required. It is not the editor's job to do your work, so you need to make sure what kind of reference format each journal is specifically mentioned in their author instructions, okay? So they follow sometimes alphabetical by author followed by date. There's an example there, Burridge, MG 1998, right? And then you have a American Psychological Association system. They follow a parenthesis of the year, different style. And then you have Vancouver system, all right? And they basically number the references 1, 2, 3, 4, and cite numbers in the text, and followed by references that are numbered in reference section. So make sure you check in the journal guideline what type of reference style and format the particular journal that you're going to publish follow. Then supplementary materials, so you can include supplementary material to support your work. And these are not primary importance to your publication, but it's a secondary importance that include microarray data, method validation, quality control, any kind of video data. Those are not published, but these data will be in journal website for people to go refer more detailed methods, okay? So you can include supplementary materials. So summary points about writing quality manuscript. Language is important. To publisher correct language? No, publishers don't correct the language. It is the author's responsibility to make sure your paper is the best possible form when submitted for publication. So don't give them excuse to reject your paper. So try to make sure your paper has a really good language, written in good language, okay? So publishers provide resources for authors who are less familiar with, international journals. So you can check publishers' website for more information. So some publishers may also offer technical screening prior to peer review. So you can visit Elsevier website for translation and language editing services. So there is professional language editing services out there. If you need to, you can get their help. So again, I want to stress this point from Arnold Jacobs. Journal editors are overloaded with quality manuscript, make decisions on manuscript based on formal criteria like grammar or spelling. So don't get rejected for avoidable mistakes. So you can, get your paper rejected if you prepare your paper poorly. So these are things you can avoid. Okay, make sure your manuscript looks perfect when you submit it. Okay, so if you do that way, both science and the language need to be of top quality when you turn it in for into the journal for peer review purpose. Okay. So when you write your paper, your paper should be should have your written with clarity, objectivity, accuracy, and brevity. Right? Brevity is good. You don't want to have a long, convoluted sentences. Make your paper simple, easy to follow, easy to understand. So key to successful manuscript writing is to be alert to common errors like sentence structure, construction, incorrect tenses you're using in the paper, inaccurate grammar, mixing languages. Sometimes they introduce a local language into the paper, it's the English language paper. Okay, so we need a guide to authors check for each journals, and make sure you follow the language specification. Again, some more point I want to talk about. Present tenses are used for known fact and hypothesis. Okay, example, the average life of a honeybee is 6 weeks. So that's a well-established fact. When you write this in sentence, you write in present tense. Okay. Past tense are used for method section, experiments you have already conducted, right? Example here is, all the honeybees were maintained in an environment with consistent temperature of 23 degrees centigrade, right? Past tense when you describe the results of an experiment. So results should be in past tense, okay? The average lifespan of bees in our contained environment was 8 weeks, okay? So you can see that. So here is the result in past tense, method in past tense. When you state the well-known fact and hypothesis is in present tense. Okay, so language is important. Again, use active voice as to shorten your sentence. So here is an example when you describe in a passive voice. It has been found that there had been, that is a passive voice. And an active voice is the authors found that. Right? So you shorten your words, okay? In passive voice, another example is carbon dioxide was consumed by the plant. Active voice, the plant consumed carbon dioxide. So write your paper in active voice, okay? And also avoid abbreviation like it's. It should be fully written it is instead of it's. And where not is how you should write. Don't put weren't or hasn't, haven't. Don't do that. You write full, okay? Never use this kind of format in your scientific writing. Okay? Only use abbreviation for units of measure, like established scientific abbreviation. You can use it like example DNA. Everybody knows what is DNA. So when you use abbreviation, make sure you spell out the whole abbreviation first. Use English throughout the manuscript, including figures. So here's an example we have reviewed. People submit a paper with the data point in different languages, right? So make sure your graphics are all in English. Okay, your paper may be in English, but you forgot to check your figures, and figures have Chinese character here. Okay. So how can you ensure I'm using proper manuscript language? Proper language is important so that editors, reviewers, and future readers can easily understand what the message you're trying to convey to the readers, okay? Refers to the guideline for the authors for specification, and also check that your paper has short sentences, correct tense, correct grammar, and is all in English, not mixed with the local language. Have a native English science editor to review before you submit the paper, right? These are some of the key points that you should use. Some more points to when you write a paper. The good writing process have these 3 C's. Those 3 C's are clarity, conciseness and correctness. Make sure you report your paper accurate data, okay? The key is to be as brief and specific as possible without omitting essential details. So brevity is important. So conciseness, clarity, and correctness are the keys to good paper. Know your enemy. These are the things you need to avoid when you write paper. Don't repeat the information over and over again. Repetition is really bad. Don't be redundant, okay? Sometimes you use same material but using different word, and it's basically it's redundant. You're conveying that, it's convoluting your message. And don't be ambiguous when you make a statement. Avoid ambiguity. And again, don't exaggerate, just to the point. What is your result about? Don't make grand statement, okay? So those are the things you should avoid when you write a paper. Here's some example of what is a repetition and redundancy. So you vary the sentence used when writing the abstract or describing the findings at the end of the introduction. Don't copy verbatim from other sections, okay? Your abstract and summary should be different. Conclusion section, don't copy the same sentence from the abstract, put in your conclusion, okay? Avoids word with the same meaning. For example, here's the in addition. Sections were also stained with. So in addition and also has the same meaning, all right? So avoid such statement. And here's another one. After centrifugation, pellets were then. So here's after and then is the same meaning, okay? So avoid such mistakes when you write your paper. Exaggeration, you should be avoid exaggerating your data, okay? Here is a figure. It says statistically different, but it's a statement made where there was a massive decrease in the number of tumors following post-operative administration of green tea, right? So the data is only, marginally significant. Here is a claim, there's a massive decrease, okay? This is exaggeration, okay? So make sure you say it is significant, but don't exaggerate as a massive decrease in that. So these are the things, some of the common mistake people make when they write the first paper, okay? Let's look at some more quality manuscripts, some technical details, okay? The layout, you need to have, keep line spacing, font size, throughout, double space, 12 point times New Roman is what is preferred most of the time. You need to be consistent in your heading style throughout, no more than 3 levels of heading, okay? You need to number your pages, and you also number the line of each in your each pages, line number, give line number. So that's good for reviewers to point out which line they're talking about. Order and title sections are instructed in the guide for authors. So follow that order for each journal. And figures and table sections are normally together following references. When you submit it, most of the time, text followed by acknowledgement, reference, and then you have figures and tables, okay? The normal length of the paper is 7,500 to 8,500 is the ideal length for a submitted manuscript. That includes data, okay? It varies from some journals, so make sure you follow specific guidelines for authors in each journal, okay? Final check, make sure revision before submission can prevent early rejection. So read a paper 2-3 times. Ask your colleague to read before you submit it, okay? So you had, what can I do to ensure my paper is the best possible state before you submit? Ask your colleague to read, look at it, check again everything meets the requirement. Make sure you follow the guidelines. Check the scope of the paper is appropriate for selected journal, okay? If it is not in the last minute after you look at the data and result, you can change the journal, go to some other journal, okay? Don't submit your paper to a wrong journal with a different scope. That immediately will get rejected. And the cover letter is important when you submit your paper, because this is a chance to speak to the editor directly, and keep it brief, would convey the particular importance of your manuscript to the journal. So just potential reviewers, and this is your opportunity to convince a journal and editor, they should publish a study. So it is worth investing their time, your time in the cover letter. So you need to have some detailed information in the cover letter. Okay. So in the cover letter, you include editor name, address at the beginning. And the first sentence provide title, author, list, and journal name. These are the information of your paper. And briefly describe your research area and track record, the main findings of your research, the significance of your research in the cover letter in one paragraph, in a brief paragraph. And then confirm the originality of your paper and confirm that there are no competing financial interests. And also make sure if there are multiple authors, all authors are agreed to publish the paper. So those are information that should be in your cover letter. Final check, you need to re-review before submission. You can avoid rejection if you do all these things, okay? If necessary, again, get a colleague or approved editing service to improve the language and ensure the manuscript, those 3 C's I talked about, and also ensure that the literature is balanced and the aims and purpose of the study and the significance of the results are very clear. And lastly, use a spell checker. There are a lot of spelling mistakes in papers I had reviewed, so that is also important. There are some language editing service out there. Here are a few that is listed here in this slide, so you can get their help if you need it. Okay, so you put your ideas in a draft form and send it to this editing service, and they can make your paper better. But that doesn't guarantee it'll get accepted. But it should be, you should have a good science, but they can try to help you. Polish your language, but they usually charge for their services. Okay, once you submitted, the paper goes to review, and then the reviewers make comments. The editor consolidate the reviewer comments and send the comments back to you, okay, for revisions. Okay, so what should you do when your paper comes back for revisions? So carefully study the reviewers and editors' comments and prepare a detailed letter of response. So you need to respond each comment made by the reviewers and the editors. Okay, that's called response to reply to reviewers' comments. You need to make in a separate document when you submit that. You need to respond to all points. Even if you disagree with the reviewer, you need to provide a polite and scientifically solid rebuttal rather than ignoring the comment, okay? So you need to make sure you address all the points. And you also have to give a page and line number when referring to revision, where you made the correction in your revision. So it should be in a different colored letter in your revision, red letter, blue letter, and also mention in your response to reviewers' comments, which line you made that correction, okay? You can also perform additional calculation, computation, or experiments if required. So these usually serve to make your final paper stronger. So don't just make a cursory correction and send it back. That will surely get rejected. So you need to make sure you pay attention to all the comments and respond to all the comments. Okay. So when here's an example. When you respond to a reviewer's comment, don't make a statement like the reviewer, like here's an example. The reviewer is clearly ignorant of the work of so-and-so, showing that the electric field strength in the ionization shown that burned corona in less than the space, all that. Right? Don't say that the reviewer is ignorant, all right? You have to be polite when you reply to the reviewer's comment. Thank you for your comment. However, we feel that the assumption in our model is supported by recent work by so-and-so who showed this result. So your response should be polite. Don't make a really rude response, okay? Also state specifically what changes you made to each and every comment and which page and which line number you made the comment. Avoid repeating the same response over and over. If 2 or 3 reviewers made the same Comment, you can say, once you made first time, you can say, yeah, similar comment is made by multiple reviewers. So you can say it's already made in that. Okay, so don't repeat the same whole paragraph of commenting over and over. Okay. So what kind of paper get accepted? People that give attention to details, and check and double check your work, consider the reviews of the reviewers and respond really well. English must be good, as good as possible. Presentation is important, right? Your science may be good. If your paper does not flow when they read, your presentation is not good, then it's going to get rejected. Okay, take your time with revisions. Acknowledge those who helped you. New and original, previously unpublished work, easily get accepted. Critically evaluate your own manuscript. Read. Be critic on your own when you read your paper. Pay attention to that. And ethical rules must be obeyed. When you are submitting a paper, you need to follow some certain ethical rules. Okay. So accepting, you need to accept rejection, because you need to, have a thicker skin. People get paper get rejected. Okay. Don't take it personally when you get a rejection letter. Try to understand why the paper has been rejected. You need to evaluate honestly. Will your paper meet the journal's requirement? With the addition of more data, or is another journal more appropriate than this journal? Okay. Don't resubmit elsewhere without revising the paper. All right. If your paper is rejected from one journal, look at the reviewer's comment, improve your paper, and choose another journal. Don't submit the same paper to a different journal without making improvement. Okay. So basically, rejection is part of public publishing. So you should accept it, develop thick skin. All right. A lot of Nobel Prize winners' papers are rejected. So it's nothing to take personally. Okay. Some of the strategy, submitting paper that are revised previously or rejected. Sometimes you can state in your cover letter when you're revise the paper and resubmitting it different. You can be honest. You can say this paper was submitted and was rejected, and we improved the paper in your cover letter when you are submitting another journal. Okay, and you can explain why you are submitting to this journal, and you can state journal is more appropriate, and we improved the paper, so it's now acceptable. So it's okay. Take the rejected paper and turn it around, improve it, and submit to another journal. Okay. Few more slides on ethical issues when you write a paper. Unethical behavior can earn rejection and even ban from publishing house. You cannot publish in your future if you have some unethical behavior. Here is some of the unethical behavior. Multiple submission, don't submit the same paper to multiple journals at the same time, right? Make sure once the paper goes for review and comes back, and rejected, then you submit to another journal. Do not submit at the same time, same paper, right? That is an unethical behavior, okay? Redundant publications is again unethical behavior. You just have almost the same paper, here and there modified few things, and you're submitting a paper for publication. Plagiarism is a big no-no, so you need to make sure that you're not plagiarizing somebody's work. And data fabrication and falsification is another big unethical thing that you can get banned from publishing. Improper use of human subject if you are in medical field, in research. Improper author contribution. So these are some of the unethical behaviors. Okay. Few more examples are multiple submissions. Multiple submissions save time but waste editor's time, and it is unethical. So the editorial process of a manuscript will be completely stopped if the duplicate submissions are discovered. So because they usually check each other, different publishing house, different journal. If it is considered unethical, they're going to throw out your paper, and then they also completely ban you from publishing in that particular publishing office. Okay, So make sure that don't do that. Yeah, again, as I said, competing journals constantly exchange information on suspicious papers. So you should not send your manuscript to a second journal until you receive the reject decision from the first one. So don't do it. Okay. Redundant publication. What is redundant publication? An author should not submit for consideration another than a previously published paper. Right? He already published a paper. And you take the same material from the paper, maybe a cursory modification, and submit and republish it. Don't do that. That is redundant. Yeah, a previous publication abstract and short conference paper in the proceedings is allowed. If you have a conference paper, you can publish that, but you need to make a full disclosure in your cover letter saying that, yes, this was accepted in the proceedings, now I am submitting a full journal. That's allowed, but don't publish a full paper again with a slight modification. Republication of paper from another language is acceptable. So you publish in Chinese or Indonesian language, but you wanted to publish in English, but you need to make a full disclosure. You need to make a statement in your at the end of the paper. This paper was published previously in this journal, regional journal. So you need to make that statement. Okay, so be aware of that. Plagiarism is again a big no-no. It's a couple of definitions. Here's one: is appropriation of another person's ideas, processes, results, or words without giving appropriate credit, including those obtained through confidential review of others' research proposal and manuscript. Okay, that's a definition of plagiarism in U.S. government science and technology policy. Here's another one: presenting the data and interpretation of others without crediting them and thereby gaining for yourself the reward earned by others is a theft. And it eliminates the motivation of working scientists to generate new data and interpretation. So that's another definition of plagiarism. So it's a serious offense that could lead to rejection of paper, academic charges, termination of employment. If you do that, it will seriously affect your scientific reputation. So don't do it. Unacceptable paraphrasing, even with correct citation, is also plagiarism. Okay, so make sure you pay attention when you write a paper. Data fabrication and falsification is really, really bad. If you just, just to convey your hypothesis, you're making up data. Fabrication is making up data, results, and reporting them, and basically a falsification, manipulating a research material, equipment, all that. So those are the things that you don't want to do that in publication. It's the most dangerous. The most dangerous of all falsehood is a slightly distorted truth. It's a quote from Lichtenberg. Okay. Again, improper author contribution. Authors' credit should be based on substantial contribution of all authors. Okay, there is nowadays in each paper you have to give authors credit. Who did what in the paper? Who did the work? Who wrote the paper? Who edited the paper? Final approval, all that. So make sure you give proper contribution of each author. Okay. Authors should meet all those three conditions if their name should be as an author. Okay. So that's where I stop. And if you want what the peer reviewer's role and what the peer reviewer is going to look at the paper, we can go. But Dr. Wresta, you want me to continue, or I can stop here and take questions?
I think we can stop here first, Prof. Raj, because we have so many questions already in the Slido. So I probably will go through them one by one and start asking them.
Okay.
Then perhaps you can answer it. Yeah. So let's start the question first, Prof. Raj.
All right.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Prof. Raj. Let's see. Here I have someone have a question in here. They'd like to ask how necessary to add the references to the journal from the journal that we want to submit, and then how to deal with the slow response of the journal. Should we wait or we have to do something about it?
Okay. So nowadays, this is really unethical in the journal's part. The editors sometimes emphasize cite papers from the same journal, right? They say at least give few papers published in the same journal. In my opinion, that is unethical in editors' part because they wanted to improve their impact factor. Okay. If it is relevant, if there is a paper that makes the same story that you are talking about, and they already published in the same journal, it's go ahead, okay to you include that references in your paper. But I had seen that, and the editors emphasized cite references from the same journals. That I would recommend only if it is relevant, cite them. If it is not relevant, don't cite them. So I say, hey, this is not, the papers are there, but it is not relevant to what I'm talking about. So that's my opinion. But I had seen editors requesting, including the references. That is unethical on the editor's part, okay? The second question about, what's the second question? References you talked about?
How to deal with the slow response of the journal.
Oh, yeah. If it is a good journal, the turnaround time is 3 weeks. You should know. It's a very fast publication out there, and they will get you a paper, what stage they are in. And if it is upcoming journal, it's going to take time because the finding reviewers is tough. Most of them, don't want to review papers. I would usually wait 3 to 4 weeks. If you don't get any response, you can write to the editor stating, I submitted, I have, if you can monitor on the journal website, if your paper is still sitting on editor's desk, it's not under review, you can ask them, it is still in the editor's desk, and I would like to speed up the process. And so that's okay to write to the editor. I would do 3 to 4 weeks. If it is not moving, you can write to the editor, send an email. So yeah.
Okay, so we shouldn't wait. So we shouldn't wait too long, right?
Not too long.
Yeah.
I would say 3 to 4 weeks. If you can check periodically if your paper status is still sitting, it didn't go out for review, you can, after 3 to 4 weeks, you can send an email to the editor. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah.
Thank you, Prof.
Okay.
We also have a question here from Shahdan. He basically want to ask if you can explain a little bit the general or acceptable structure of a review paper. So there are a few people asking also about this question about the structure of review paper.
Okay. The review paper has to be concise and describe other people's work in a critical analysis way. I don't want you guys to state a review paper like just reporting, so-and-so reported this, so-and-so reported this. That is not a review paper, right? It's a lot of papers have been submitted in that format and get rejected. So you need to explain each subsection that you are describing in a review. You have to critically analyze all this paper and put in your own words what are these papers describing, and you can make a schematic of their work and describe in a figure and then write in a text format. But do not say that some James et al. Reported this, and Chandra et al. Reported this, and I had seen that just giving statement, and that is a bad review paper. So what they're looking for is a critical synthesis and analysis of all the papers in different subheadings you're trying to describe. Okay.
So
review paper should not be. It doesn't have to be a long review paper. If you look at some of the good review paper I read, it's only 5 pages, 6 pages. But there are long review papers out there. But when you read the review and you get a sense of the particular subject they're talking about. Yeah.
Okay, Prof. I think I'll continue with a question from Sunu Pertiwi because it's still related. she's currently working on a book chapter. So is it different with the review paper, or how do you see the book between the book chapter and the review paper?
Book chapter has a little more leeway than the review paper. Book chapters, you can describe more details about each and everybody's work. In review paper, you're more synthesizing a lot of work and put them in a small paragraph. In book chapter, you're making it a little more elaborate. And sometimes the book chapters describes a review and then include case studies, a couple of good work. They give an example as case studies in the book chapter, but you don't see that in the review paper, okay? So review paper is more of synthesizing, summarizing, whereas a book chapter is, extended form of review, and you can, talk about somebody's work in a couple of paragraphs instead of 1 or 2 sentences. So that's a difference between a book chapter and a review paper. Yeah.
Okay, Prof. Okay, Prof. Thank you. And then, okay, we have also question about references, the number of references, Prof. In terms of number of references, would you please to inform how many references normally? Is it different for Q1, Q2 journal, Q3, and so on? And normally, what should be like the competition?
Yeah. That number of references. Nowadays, most journals spell out for the type of paper how many references maximum you can include. Okay. So as I said, research papers and not more than 50. A short communication, maybe 10, 12 maximum. Review papers can go from 80 to 400. But usually they give a number. For example, if you check bioresource technology, they give you a number. Do not exceed that reference for a research paper and review paper. They're very strict. If you extended that, they'll ask you to cut down or maybe reject your paper. Yeah.
Okay.
So it spells out in most of the journal number of references for each type of papers. Yeah.
So it's normally in the guide for authors, I think.
Authors guidelines, yes. Yeah.
Okay, okay, Prof. Okay. Okay, now there is a question about the content of the manuscript that can be published. Like, there is a question, is it enough just to change a new feedstock and follow the methods of certain research experiment and try to publish it in the reputable journal? Is that enough, Prof, just to change the new feedstock?
That's all. If the data, if you're repeating the experiment, the methodology is the same. Your feedstock is different, but your results are different. It's okay, because the only thing is you're following the same method. But if everything is identical, your result is the same, your method is the same, then the journal won't look at that paper because it's looked like almost redundant because you already published almost similar work. And this one, everything is the same except the feedstock, so that may get rejected. But if you have a completely different result, a different feedstock, different result, but you're using same methodology, that's okay, that's good.
Okay.
But if you have the same trend, everything is the same. Only difference is the feedstock, and that's a big no-no. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Thank you. And then we also have here a question about the name of the author, the sequence of the author. I think many of them, the participant asking about it. How do you decide? How you normally decide about the sequence? Who is the first author, the second, and why? And what's the benefit of the first author and second, and so on?
Okay. I mean, usually decided by the group in the lab where they're working, and when they're writing the paper, they decide that. I mean, the editors don't decide that. So most of the time, the first author is the guy who did the work in the lab work and everything, and also contributed in designing the experiment and all that stuff. Okay. And depending on co-authorship, if there are like multiple students and participated in the project, it can go by workload, who contributed more, the second author and third author, fourth author. And the senior author, usually the professor in the university system, in the lab, in charge, the senior author. And senior author get to be the corresponding author most of the time, not the student, because senior author is in charge of funding and correspondence with editors. So that's how it goes. And the editor don't get to decide who the authorship wise. But when you submit the paper, you need to make sure that all authors know their paper was submitted, because the editor's office will send an acknowledgement stating everybody's, including all emails. So you need to include all email address when you submit the paper. So they will send you initial acknowledgement, and if you get a notification saying that thanks for submitting the paper, and you were not aware of it, and that's not good way to do it. So make sure everybody knows and everybody agrees to the paper. But the sequence and the who goes first, it's all decided by the group where the paper is coming from. The first author is mostly contributor to the project, and it is important because that's the name that gets cited in the text. When they cite the references, the first author name is the one it is in the text.
Okay. Thank you, Prof. Okay, I think we also have a question from many junior researchers here.
Okay.
They ask, many of junior researchers here in Indonesia, they have a pressure to publish in a high impact journal, however, within a limited time, sometimes a year or within 2 years, while normally the good research takes time. So what's your suggestion and what's your advice for this junior researcher?
I mean, there's always pressure to publish your work in Q1 good quality journal. If your work is good and if you have confidence that you're contributing something, you should go ahead with Q1 and go straight. If you doubt yourself, the work is not quality work, and don't submit it to Q1. But the pressure is there, but you need to make sure you have a good science, you have a good data and something new, something novel to contribute. If you have that information, if you think, yes, I have that, you go ahead and turn it to Q1 journal. That's good. Most of the standard journals have fast turnaround, and they don't wait too long. You'll get your paper accepted or revised or rejected very quickly. So yeah, for example, bioresource technology, the average time turnaround is like the time you submit, the time is going to be in print in 6 weeks. Yeah. So some of them are really fast. Yeah.
Okay, Prof. I'd like to continue about this. I think there is a question here about still about the publication in high impact journal. But he asking about, do you think it's okay to publish in Proceeding, after you publish in Proceeding like certain amount of your work, and then you extend the work and then publish it again in a high impact journal? Is it okay to do that?
Yes, it is. If it is a conference proceeding, you publish your work and you put in extra work, and you can publish in Q1 journal and make a statement clearly in your cover letter, and also maybe at the end of the footnote you can say that part of this work was published in a conference proceeding, and give the full citation of the conference. So it is acceptable. So it is not unethical to do that, because conference proceedings with more data you can publish in a full journal paper, in quality 1 paper, Q1 paper. Yeah.
Okay, Prof. Okay, we also have here from Agung Gunawan from Biotechnology ITB.
Yeah.
Dear Prof Raj, what if in citing unreputed journal reference, will it impact the publication as a writer for Q1, or what? How do you see this thing? Like sometimes some people
citing references from Q1 journal. What is it?
From unreputed journal reference. So, for example, not maybe from Scopus journal or something like that. Yeah.
It depends. If if it is relevant to your work and you have paper that's published in, in a low-rated journal, it's okay to cite them, but not too many of them. Only relevant one. If you don't use 40, 50% reference from such journals, but give them only very relevant paper. When I review, I had seen some of those references that I never heard of those journals, but when I look at that, if the material is relevant, it is acceptable. Yeah. But don't do them overly, but only include the relevant papers published in such journals. Yeah.
Okay, Prof. We also have a question from Aslan here. I think he's asking about the abstract. He said sometime when he write the abstract, it's always too long. What's advice you can give to make it shorter and to avoid this in writing an abstract?
You have to practice it. You rewrite it. So put all your ideas first. It could be 2-3 pages. And then you had to, go back and reconstruct your statement. And then, it takes 3-4 times to, get your abstract the way you want it, the way the journal want it. Okay. Even now, I do my abstract when I write a paper. I do like 3 or 4 times before I send it out. So the important key thing is when you write an abstract, it should clearly state very briefly the background information of your work, the work that you're doing, and then the objective clearly. What is your work going to be, and how it was done, and those are the key information, as I point out in my talk, should be in your abstract. So if you follow those guidelines, you should be able to fit your abstract in, based on different journals. Bioresource has 150 words. You cannot exceed that. Even if you put one extra word, the journal won't take your, you can't even submit the paper. You need to reduce to 150 words. So yeah, practice it and follow those do's and don'ts that I put out, and, include that in when you prepare abstract. So when you write, first write whatever you want to state it and go back and read and cut it out several times and make it to a short form. Yeah.
Okay, Prof. Okay, Prof. We also have. Is it okay, Prof? We take more question. I think we still have more. I
don't have to go and talk about what the reviewers do. It's not relevant. Yeah.
Okay. This one is from Diki Adihayu. I think it's related to pandemic this time. He said it's quite hard to work in the lab in campus right now. Sometimes it's closed and so on. Is it possible to start drafting the manuscript, like predicting the result and discussion first, or we should wait until we have enough data to collect? What do you think?
It's okay to write most of your paper, like introduction and materials, methods. Okay, if you don't have a result, it's hard to write the rest of the paper. So you collect, information, papers regarding your work and start constructing your introduction and method section, because you know what method you're going to be using, and even if you haven't done the experiment. So the method section should be, as I said, it should be in past tense. So you just, construct your statements in past tense as if you are done. But if you don't have your data, you cannot predict how experiments go. So that's, but it could be an exercise. You can do that. And if your data look like that, and if you got the data, it's easy. But I doubt without doing experiment, you can write the results and discussion. So you can collect material for writing discussion because you know your idea, you're going to do this experiment. But you don't know how that experiment going to go. So without that data, you cannot write the result section. But go ahead and write introduction and methods. Yeah.
Okay, Prof. Thank you, Prof. We also have a question here, I think, from a couple of people relating to predatory journal. So I think that nowadays there are so many emails to publish in certain journal and so on. So based on your experience, how to avoid this predatory journal? And what's your opinion with journal that only provide open access but comes with a publishing fee?
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I be very careful. Such journal. This is basically is not reputed journals, and you should do some research and look at the journal. Looking at what kind of status the journal has. Whether it is already been Q1, Q2 is listed in Scopus now. That you can check on that. Um, in US and Europe nowadays, the trend is open access publication because they want the copyright to the authors, so they don't want copyright to the publishing house. But what they do is they publish in society journals that is belong to that is reputed journals. But there is out there a lot of those predatory journals that people are sending you solicitations. I'll be very, very careful if you get emails saying that, hey, they might have heard your name from a conference somewhere and say, I saw your work and we have the journal you can publish, and I'll be very, very careful about entertaining such emails. So because they are out there for getting your page fees, publication fee, and they may not even have a good record at all. Your paper will be in print, but I don't know what kind of quality that will be. So I'll be very, very careful. But at the same time, the journal that charge you, but they are part of an international society. And that is good because, for example, ASM, American Society for Microbiology, Society for Industrial Microbiology, Biotechnology, they have a lot of journals they publish, but you have to pay for it because they are not for profit. And so those channels are a very reputable channel. Okay. So.
Okay, Prof. Okay, Prof. Continuing the question.
Yeah.
What's normally the best way to check, like because we have so many research database nowadays. We have Scopus, we have Web of Science, Shimago, and so on. So which one normally you go for just to check a certain journal, or you just straight to the website, or how you check?
Yeah, I mean, based on my experience, I know what are the good journals from my side. But if people starting out, you can check Scopus and look at journal impact factor and citation number, citation score, all that. You can nowadays available for every journal, and then you can read some papers that come out of this journal. You can tell the quality of publications by looking at what kind of paper they're publishing. And so if you don't know what kind of journal, you can just Google in your area quality paper publication, and there is a list of journals out there for every discipline. So so there are a lot of predatory journals. You have to watch for that. If you get solicitation over and over, then that is a big red flag. So yeah.
Okay, Prof. Okay, let me continue. There's still a few more questions here, Prof. From Ahmad Sofian Nasori. Are there any restriction regarding the data variable that will be written in the publication? Is it possible with minimum data to publish in Q1? Or yeah.
I don't think there is data restriction. If you have something that is new that you want to report that's never been out there, you can publish with one figure, one table. I had seen paper 2 pages published. So there is no minimum number of references, a minimum number of tables and figures. No. But if you think your finding is that only very specific, very particular, you don't have elaborate data, but you have something to report, maybe short communication is the way to go. You can publish a paper in short communication format. Yes. Yeah.
I see. So I guess choosing the right format of the publication is that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, Prof. And then I think we have also a question here. I think it's a common thing that happen nowadays. Is it okay to do a self-citing more than 1 or 2 papers if we think it's related to our current work? Is it a common practice, or is there any limitation how many papers you can self-citing?
It is okay to cite your own work if it is relevant, all right? as I said, but for example, if your total reference is 30 references and you have 25 of them your own paper, that is not acceptable. Okay. Yes. So the reviewers immediately look at that, and that's why you're citing your own paper 80% of the time. So it's okay if it is relevant and to the point. You can cite your own papers. But again, at your call, you look at how many references you have, and I would say 5 to 6 maximum is okay, but don't overly cite your work. That's one of the red flag people look at. So yeah.
Okay, Prof. Okay, and then still related with citation here, what's your suggestion about improving the readability or citation of this manuscript or your paper? So is it something that you have to strategize, or just let it go naturally?
It comes with practice, but when you're writing first time, I would say the strategy is simple message, simple sentence structure. Don't make complicated sentences. Your paper should be easy to follow. Anybody can read and understand it. Don't complicate your writing. All right. Again, I said brevity. Make your paper short. Don't repeat the information over and over. Okay. Sometimes you're trying to say something in the introduction. You're saying the same message in the discussion, same references. Avoid such thing. Okay. So it has to come with practice. And again, I said the thing I look for in a good paper is easy to read, easy to follow. When you read the paper one time, you should get the message. And avoid repetition or redundancy, and brevity. Make it short. Your statement, make it short. And again, the thing I emphasize: don't make very grandiose statement. If it is significant, report is significant, and don't overly say that this is the best work that ever done in this field. Don't overemphasize.
Okay, Prof. Okay, Prof. Okay, we also have here from Bibiana Dotawa. Can you share your experience, Prof, how you start write an article? Is there any sequence? You start with introduction, or you start first with the data first, you try to make your figure and table and so on? Or how is it? Is it there is no really the right sequence, or it's really up to your style or certain style of people?
Yeah. Each individual has their own style, but particularly, for my example, I first look at the data. I look at, from my students, I say, okay, put all together. I want to look at all the data, and then pick the one that convey the real good message, and then I can, based on that figures and table that I'm going to format in my paper, then I will write my abstract first. Yeah. Okay. Because I already know from the work what is the subject they're talking about. I know about the thing that already been done in the field. So you can construct your abstract after looking at your data. So I first look at figures and tables first, and I know what kind of paper that's going to be. Okay, and then you collect information for your introduction. Introduction, again, you need to state what has been already reported in this field, and what is new that you're bringing to this in your paper, and clearly state the objective in your introduction. Okay, so that's how I go. I look at the results first and construct my abstract, and then I will, in my mind, I will know what figure to emphasize and what figure not to overly emphasize. I'll make that point. So.
Okay, Prof. Okay, and then we have maybe I try to try to wrap up with 2 questions here from Johnson first.
Okay.
We want to know how to choose the correct or suitable journal to publish the paper, or is there any certain tool, or you should go talk to people, or how is it, Prof?
in your field, depending on what kind of research you're doing, you should already know from collecting information. When you're collecting references for your work, right? You should know which journal is publishing your type of data. So you can choose from your review of your literature that you're collecting, which journal to submit. And if you don't know the quality of the journal, again, you can search the title of the journal and what kind of quality they have. So that's how you can go. Make sure that your work fits the scope of the journal. That is important. You need to read the journal website. What is the journal scope? And if it is not within the scope, they're going to reject right away. It is not, within the scope. So those are the things important. So I would go usually select 3 journals if I want to publish a paper and go with the first choice based on, what type of work has been published in that journal, because I know collecting paper, reading papers, I know what type of paper they publish. And also I make sure I read and reread their scope, each journal. So that's how I choose my publication.
Okay, Prof. Okay. Perhaps this is probably the last question. We try to combine a few questions here.
Okay.
Based on your experience as a reviewer or editor, what will be the top reasons for you to reject the manuscript right away? So other than language,
other than language,
yes.
I would reject the paper if they're not supported by evidence. They're making statement and there is no data to back it up. So they're saying that, yes, they found this and this, but I don't see that in figures and tables. And you have to have data. If you make a statement that this is what you found, if there is no data to back it up, that is the first reason to reject your paper. And then I look for flow of the writing, how the paper, when you read it, it flows, it's not choppy. There's one statement over there, another statement over there, not, closely related to each other. Such things are not a good paper. So you need to make sure you state your objective, right? And then when you conclude, you make sure you prove your objective. If your objectives say one thing and your conclusions say another thing, that is another way to reject the paper. You did not even meet your objective at the end of your paper. So there's a few things I reject. I want to make sure you have evidence to support your claim, whatever claim you're making, and whatever objective you made is conclusively proven in your conclusion. And then it flows really well when you read it. So those are the 3 things I look for.
Okay, Prof. Thank you so much, Prof. I think it looks like we cover all the questions from participants. Yeah. Is there anything else, Prof, you want to cover before wrap up?
I think I covered most of the writing part. The rest was reviewing, but don't worry about that. That's not for not for people writing the paper. So this is good. So I think it's almost time. So I hope you got something out of this, and I make this PowerPoint available for everyone, so you can look on your own time. Look at, as I said, the 3 C's and the 4 enemies, and look at those things when you write a paper and follow. That will help you publish. Okay. Right? I wish you good luck to everyone and get papers published. Okay.
Thank you so much, Prof. Please stay with us for a few more minutes, Prof.
Okay.
So, I guess today we just discussed and learned many things about good quality publication, right? We learned about why we need to publish different type of publications, such as short communication, conference proceeding, review paper, or a full length of a research article. And then Prof. Raj also provide us a guideline and steps before we write the manuscript, especially regarding the guide for authors, right? And he also show us a typical outline of the manuscript and go into detail on how to construct them. So we learn about how to present the data in the form of text, table, and graphics. We also learn how to avoid common mistakes such as redundancy, repetition, wrong language, and exaggeration. And he also shared many tips, such as the importance of being polite to the reviewer, the ethics of publication, and many more, right? So we definitely can use many things from Prof. Raj's presentation today. And I'm quite confident that many of the participants here soon will be able to publish in high quality journal. And hopefully this session also will induce many collaboration, Prof, between a researcher to accelerate their research progress and to be more productive in terms of publication. Before we close the session, we'd like to present this to Prof. Raj. Wait a second. Let me share the screen. Prof. Raj, we'd like to thank you for sharing your knowledge and experience here, Prof. This is just a little appreciation for you, as e-certificate for Prof. Ramaraj Boopathy as a guest speaker on this JETS Writing Scientific Manuscript Series 2021. Let's applaud Prof. Raj for this certificate. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
And then I'd like also to mention to promote this for the webinar series for next week. We have a Writing Scientific Manuscript Series, the volume number 2, which is kiat-kiat menulis makalah yang disukai diterima oleh editor jurnal ilmiah yang akan dibawakan oleh Dr. Afrianti Sumboja and moderated by Dr. Hairudin. So please register through the link. It's also provided in the chat room. Okay.
Okay.
And again, thank you, everyone. We appreciate it for you being here. Thank you again for joining us today during JETS ITB Writing Scientific Manuscript Series 2021. And we hope to see you again next time. Again, Prof, thank you, Prof. Raj, for sharing your experience and inspire many. We really appreciate it. Thank you to the LPPM, Institute of Research and Community Service, ITB. And perhaps, Prof. Chandra, do you want to say something, Prof, before we close?
Yeah, thank you, Raj. So I'm still on the way. Thank you.
Okay,
And then regard to Rose is also from Marlena.
Okay, I'll tell her. Hi, Marlena. Okay. All right.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. Have a good day, everyone. And Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We close this session. Thank you so much. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Raj. Have a nice weekend.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Weekend coming up.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Terima kasih